800-611-6638. That's 800-611-6638.
Hey, Ogama, I've been hearing a lot about this term, climate justice. What is that?
Climate justice is recognizing that the negative impacts of climate change don't affect all people equally. It also means transitioning from a fossil fuel-based economy to a more sustainable future. MN350 is one of the groups that's pushing for this transition to protect our futures. You can even get involved too.
That's great, especially since I'm concerned about pipeline projects like Line 3. How can I help MN350?
Just find them on Facebook or visit mn350.org.
Hey, Cudahy to all my friends and relatives in four directions. This is Robert Pilot of Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake. I'm here to ask you for your support. Finding honest Native-centered news is not easy. But with your support, we're able to provide accurate information about Standing Rock, Line 3, treaty violations, and COVID-19 in our Native communities. Please visit Native Roots Radio Network on Patreon and donate if you can. That's Native Roots Radio Network on Patreon. Pinigigi, and thank you for your support.
Minnesota has the only original wolf population in the continental United States, and 80% of Minnesotans believe the wolf should be protected. Howling for Wolves is asking Minnesotans to respect our true wildlife manager, the wolf. Their survival is critical to our ecosystems, our communities, and even our economy. As highly intelligent animals with strong social bonds, Minnesota wolves deserve to be protected and admired. Learn more at howlingforwolves.org. Let's live and let howl.
We have vital information we would like to share with you. The Department of Indian Works St. Paul partnered with the Minnesota Department of Health to open the Twin Cities American Indian COVID-19 hotline. They provide information on testing sites, isolation space, vaccines, housing assistance, and food resources. If you or someone you know has questions about COVID-19 or has questions to determine if you should get tested, please call them at 651-304-9986. Again, the number is 651-304-9986. The Twin Cities American Indian COVID-19 hotline is open Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. and Saturday and Sunday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m.
Call the Twin Cities American Indian COVID-19 hotline at 651-304-9986. That's 651-304-9986.
With your AM 950 weather, I'm Brett Johnson. Look for a chance of rain overnight with a low around 32. Tuesday cloudy with a high near 41. Wednesday cloudy with a high near 48. And Thursday partly sunny with a high around 53. Join Tom Hartman for a virtual brunch the day after the Blue State Ball this Sunday at 11 o'clock. Tom will lead a small group discussion, and if you attend, you'll get a copy of his newest book, The Hidden History of American Oligarchy, Reclaiming Our Democracy from the Ruling Class. Tickets are $75 and can be ordered at am950radio.com.
Portions of Native Roots Radio may be pre-recorded.
It's a good day to be indigenous.
Get up, stand up.
They are going to become more brutal.
Because all the hippies were trying to be Indians anyway.
They're going to become more repressive because it's a matter of dollars and their illusionary concepts of power.
Hey, Victor.
We must live in balance with the earth.
And also with recent happenings at Wounded Knee.
I am awake. Hey, Cudahy to all my friends and relatives in four directions. You're listening to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, and I'm your host, Wakanjahade. That means distant thunder in Ho-Chunk. My colonized name is Robert Pilot, and we're really sad here. We discuss Native news and events, and as we all know, Native issues are human issues, and human issues are Native issues.
This portion of the show is brought to you by the Twin Cities American Indian COVID-19 hotline. You can call them at 651-304-9986. They're open Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. and Saturday and Sunday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And you don't have to live in Minnesota to give them a call.
Yeah, and give them a call because they love hearing the calls. And since they've been advertising with us, they've been getting a lot of calls. So go ahead and tell them where you heard it.
Yeah.
Heard the ad. Hey, Wendy, I was like thinking about the Derek Chauvin trial and going back to school a few days ago and how my Monday was going to be, and then I have a board meeting after this. But then yesterday, Daunte Wright was shot.
Yeah, really sad.
And really, you know, we're sick and tired of brown and black people getting killed.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and you just said before the show came on is that lieutenant that bought that new car with the tinted windshield and the temporary license
Yeah,
plate.
he was pepper sprayed.
Yeah.
The officer was fired. Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, we really have to stop this.
Yeah, we have a couple of guests on today.
Mhm.
Lorenzo Serna, who was with he's a reporter, and so we'll talk about that. He's now
He
with
used to be with Unicorn Riot,
thank you,
right?
yeah, and now he's with
Yep,
Indian
yep.
Collective,
Mm-hmm.
and did we just heard Ogama saying yep,
Yep.
Yeah,
yep.
their new handle now is Unedited Camera, and I have been seeing a lot of people following their social media live feeds surrounding the aftermath and the protests that are happening right now after Daunte Wright's murder in the Twin Cities.
Right, and still happening, and you know, and we'll have Dr. Stately on later, but we'll have Lorenzo on, and you know, we think about this, but just as little as 1993, we had Native Americans thrown in the trunk, drunk Native Americans thrown into the trunk to take them to the hospital.
Of police cars,
Minneapolis police cars. And so the American Indian movement was started in 1968 because of police violence towards Native Americans and, of course, African Americans. And nothing seems to be changing. We're in 2021. So,
and it just seems like every week, every month, something else happens. Another, black, brown person is killed by a police officer or harassed or pepper sprayed or tased for no reason, and they are unarmed.
That's right. So there's our little editorial. Why don't we get Native news updates and all around Turtle Island from Ogama. I'm really happy to have that. And why don't you jump on Ogama and give us a little update on the news, please?
Absolutely. So, of course, the first thing I'm going to start with today is that Daunte Wright died after a police officer shot him during a traffic stop in Brooklyn Center, Minnesota, yesterday. If you have not heard that, reports indicate that the officer intended to use a taser. The body cam footage has also been released, and that was the body cam footage of the officer that shot Daunte Wright. Reports in the community indicate that Wright's body was left on the road for hours after he was removed from the vehicle. I mean, this story does not get any better, you guys. It just doesn't. There's a lot of things I don't understand at this point. Daunte Wright was initially pulled over, reports say, due to expired tabs, and then it was determined that he also had air fresheners hanging from the rearview mirror of the vehicle. And then that was once he was pulled over and they took his ID, that's when they determined that he had a warrant out for his arrest. So these are the types of things that people who are not black or brown are frequently and are coming out of the woodwork right now and saying those are things that they have not been pulled over for. They have driven without expired tabs. They've had warrants. They've never been pulled over on those grounds before. Even the air fresheners. And I am absolutely heartbroken and awaiting for more information on whether or not justice is actually going to be done this time. There is a call for all people tonight at 7 p.m. for a healing candlelight vigil in celebration of the life life for Daunte Wright that was requested by his family. They said bring LED candles due to the wind and rain. It's going to be at 63rd Avenue North and Catherine Drive, which is where Daunte Wright was murdered. Respect the grieving family above all else tonight is what the post said. So if you're in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area, you can go down there and participate in that vigil. The thing that I really want to point out about this is that Senator Amy Klobuchar announced that she's submitting a request to the Justice Department to ask that they work with the state and local leaders in the ongoing investigations into George Floyd's death. So specifically, the letter said that she's asking federal leaders to open an investigation to evaluate unconstitutional patterns and practices of violent policing, targeting communities of color in the Minneapolis Police Department that contributed to Mr. Floyd's tragic and unjust death. and she's expected to discuss this further. Meanwhile, District Senator Patricia Torres Ray announced via social media today that the headline of deadly traffic stop renews focus on police reform was not accurate, because the Senate majority in Minnesota had never had a discussion about police reform this session and had 0 hearings related to police reform, and that there is no renewed focus to truly reform the police at the legislature, because those things obviously have not happened. So I want to point out here that the senator that is representing the entire state of Minnesota a year later is just now asking federal leaders to open an investigation into unconstitutional patterns and practices in the Minneapolis Police Department. Meanwhile, we have a more local level legislative representative who is telling it like it is, that there has not been hearings related to police reform at the legislature in Minnesota, despite George Floyd's murder and now Daunte Wright's murder. I mean, I am blown away. I mean, I can't say that I'm surprised, because I didn't really see anything come through on the legislative end, but I have severe amounts of disappointment right now that this is not being taken care of in the Minnesota legislature. So if you have a representative, you know who it is, or even if you don't know who your representative is, you should be getting on the phone and calling them. It's really important. Black Lives Matter. Moving on for my other disappointing piece of news this weekend, LaDonna Brave Bull Allard, water protector, tribal historian, and founder of the Sacred Stone Camp at Standing Rock, died April 10th after a long battle with brain cancer. She was 64 years old. She started Sacred Stone Camp on her land in 2016. Which is at the confluence of the Cannonball and Missouri rivers. And it was the first of the water protector camps that started opposing the Dakota Access Pipeline project. She was an annual speaker at the United Nations Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues, and she was also a published writer in The Guardian. She advocated for protection of Indigenous land around the world, and she stood in solidarity with Kanaka Maoli to protect sacred Mauna Kea, Hawaii in 2019. And she is a great loss to the community, and I don't really have anything else to say beyond that being a great loss, but
yeah,
it's going to be a long week, everybody.
It's going to be a long show too. Up next, we're going to have Lorenzo Serna, and he is. I'm sorry. They are definitely one of the best documentary persons I've ever seen. We'll talk a little bit about that, but they have the boots on the ground, and we can't wait to hear from Lorenzo. We'll be right back. You're listening to Native Roots Radio Presents I'm Awake, and I'm your host, Robert.
Stay with
Hey, Wendy, what are we doing for dinner after the show?
How about we go to J. Selby's on 169 Victoria Street in St. Paul? They have a delicious plant-based menu that's compassionate and environmentally sustainable.
I'm getting their spot-on vegan Big Mac, the dirty secret.
You can pick up and they deliver within a 5-mile radius, or you can call them at 651-222-3263 or visit jselbys.com.
Well, you sold me, Wen. Let's go order at J. Selby's tonight.
I'm hungry.
We are your relatives.
We are your relations.
Brothers,
sisters,
sons,
daughters.
And some of us are your grandchildren.
We are your community. Historically, we held places of honor and respect. Because of the impact of colonization, some of us are rejected, thrown out from family, friends, and community, set up as targets for sexual violence, sex trafficked, humiliated, tortured, and murdered. Everybody has the right to be safe. We are your relatives. Remember,
homophobia is not traditional.
Sponsored by the Minnesota Indian Women's Sexual Assault Coalition.
Minnesota has the only original wolf population in the continental United States, and 80% of Minnesotans believe the wolf should be protected. Howling for Wolves is asking Minnesotans to respect our true wildlife manager, the wolf. Their survival is critical to our ecosystems, our communities, and even our economy. As highly intelligent animals with strong social bonds, Minnesota wolves deserve to be protected and admired. Learn more at howlingforwolves.org. Let's live and let howl.
If you're hurting in your relationship or have been affected by sexual violence, you're not alone. Strong Hearts Native Helpline can help you through these difficult and uncertain times. Strong Hearts Helpline is a free 24/7 confidential domestic dating and sexual violence helpline for Native Americans. Help is available by calling 1-844-762-8483 or by clicking on the Chat Now icon on strongheartshelpline.org. This message is sponsored by the National Indigenous Women's Resource Center.
Anine, I'm Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan, and you are listening to Native Roots Radio.
We are Alusa Nation.
Hey, welcome back to Native Roots Radio Presents I'm Awake, and I'm your host, Rupin Jahade.
This portion of the show is brought to you by the Twin Cities American Indian COVID-19 hotline. You could call them at 651-304-9986. They're open Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. and Saturday and Sunday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And you don't have to live in Minnesota to call them.
Yeah, give them a call. Hey, Lorenzo, Serna, I am so excited to have you on today. I know you are boots on the ground and what's happening in Minneapolis, and I don't know if you know this, but we're like now in Chicago and Madison too, so it's really much more exciting to have you on tonight. If you can just give a little update and background. First of all, I just want to say that you have the best documentary about Standing Rock out there, and I've seen so many of them, and I really want to plug that because I've seen it kind of come around again lately, and people sharing it, and it's probably the best it is the best documentary out there on Standing Rock. Welcome.
Mm-hmm. Oh, thank you. Hello, everybody. My name is Lorenzo Serna. I'm Chicanx. My pronouns are they, them. And yeah, I'm the, this is here, tactical media director at the Indian Collective. It's I do a lot of my work there. Last night I was just out on the street as like my own personal sort of, I've been doing a lot of work on this handle unedited camera. But most of the time I am doing work sort of in frontline environments. And that's what yesterday turned into, sadly, after the killing of Daunte Wright. Oh, yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No problem. So did you were there during protesting too? Because we touched briefly on the murder and the confusion, so-called confusion with a gun and a taser. What did you see last night while a lot of us were sleeping?
Well, I mean, I went to it was like 63rd and Lee, I think, where it all happened, and the family was there, and so I actually spoke to the mother, or the mother spoke to a group of us journalists and told us what happened. The mother was on the phone with Daunte when the police had pulled him over, because like it was a very similar thing I think that a lot of us have gone through in our lives, where we get pulled over and we don't have insurance, so we call our family, our mothers, and we're like, oh my gosh, he's no insurance, it's not in the car, and it's like a, and she's like, oh, don't worry. I've had my mother tell me this, on the phone. I've experienced that exact thing, and this ended and someone being shot and killed. And so I don't know. So I was there. It was really emotional. They brought out his son, and I can't explain what that. I don't know. It was really hard, to witness, this beautiful child who was just exuberant to be in the arms of his uncle. But then what he's really looking at is down the road where his father is laying in the road, and he in lines of police, and he's just holding up this child. And so after, that's part, the police brought more and more riot squads for real informational purposes. The police, the first sort of riot team that showed up with the Hennepin County Sheriff's Department, who had AR-15s and sort of arms like that. And then after that, it was two groups of riot police that were multi-precincts. I don't think my roommate knows I'm on doing this, so I apologize if you hear anything in the background. I'm doing an interview really quick to say no. Anyways, yeah, so there was like the police had these riot teams ready, and they came from like Rogers, Robbinsdale, like all the different like the different cities around the Twin Cities, and they deployed them on the people. The people were obviously really upset, and you could kind of feel the energy going back and forth as like different groups of the local community that come out to try to like corral them into the chants that they have been using for years. And just other people were just really upset and just trying to share that with each other. After that, the police sort of retreated after they had done with the work they were doing at the BCA and multiple other things that they did. Then they left, and then the protest moved to Brooklyn Center Police Department. And when I walked up, there was really rock. I don't know. People were mad. I don't know what to tell you. They're angry. Someone was killed. Neighbor to some people, a relative, somebody that looks like them, someone that seems like them, and they're really pissed, upset. I apologize. And and then after a while, the police, I think they're arguing there was restraint. There was not restraint. I can't tell you anything besides that they used, a variety of munitions to get rid of that crowd, like tear gas, rubber bullets, pepper balls, flashbang grenades, concussion grenades. And they really, the tear gas was in the air in the neighborhood. We're surrounded by apartment buildings. There's clouds and clouds of tear gas as the police were throwing them into the crowd, trying to get the crowd to move back. And the crowd eventually did from that point. And I was only there. I know a lot of things happened throughout the city, but I was just sort of at this protest at the police station just to observe. So I don't know if that helps clarify.
That does help. I know you're a big time veteran of Standing Rock, and what kind of trigger was that for you to hear these bullets and tear gas and all that? I mean, on a personal note.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I have a lot of equipment. I have, I think that it's the trauma of a life lost is, blowing up doesn't matter. Stuff around me, explosions. It's just seeing the family and his child, and that's really the hardest thing, and that's a trigger because it's not a first time, I was in the streets during George Floyd. I was there with Jamar Clark. I was there in Philando Castile. And I was like, the list, I can just make a list. Doesn't matter. I don't know. But the most traumatic thing is just being there again and feeling that the visceral emotion and loss and grief that's in the streets, rebounding off people like that. That's the trigger. And regardless of what the police are going to do, I think that's always the hardest part to really re-enter, that it's not a game and it's not anything. It's like real life. And you're just feeling it every time, unless you're just a dead person, like somebody who doesn't have emotion. I don't know. So
right. I just want to say too that he was 20 years old.
Yeah.
And just think about that. I'm a high school teacher, and I just they're babies. They're babies. Mm-hmm. People panic. People do stuff. It's just heart-wrenching, like you said, what the family's going through and
mm-hmm.
what's happening. I just want to also throw out a big Pinigi thank you for what you do, because I know during a lot of uprisings and things like that, I follow you, and it's really, really imperative, especially for people that are at home and on their Facebook and YouTube, being able to see unedited news. And I really like the name of your unedited camera. I really like the name of that name.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. I'm at Chicano X. I come from the great Chicano Nation, and we fought. We're still fighting, and a lot of people weren't believed for the things they were doing. So I hope that I can help sort of share what's going on with people so they can see for themselves and know that people are coming from places of truth. Their grief, their anger, their rage is coming from places of truth, and we need to be able to see that. And if we ever plan to move to some sort of other world that's more peaceful and kind, like, we have to acknowledge these realities that are happening in our streets. So I hope that I'm helpful in some way, and I'm, as always, just thankful for all my ancestors and everybody who fought for me to be here in this moment with you all.
Absolutely, and we're all relatives too.
Mm-hmm.
How can we, I just want to throw this out there because we have a huge audience now. How can we support your work? Do you have a Patreon or anything and your unedited camera, or how can we support you? Because this is big for us, because I didn't have the capacity to go there. I didn't hear about this. I kind of am not plugged in like you are, and to have somebody like you on our show, but also giving this service to the community as a real news person, how can we support you?
Oh, you can follow, unedited camera. That's just my personal feeds, and I have a Patreon and whatever, but it's not my main focus. Most of my work does happen at the Indian Collective. Most of my frontline work will happen there. I think tonight I'll be actually on those feeds. So I'd follow the Indian Collective and just, follow the work we're doing there. And, I'm from the cities. If I didn't have this job or I didn't have this feed, I would have been in the streets, and I want to make that clear always, regardless of where we're at. Like, I'm going to show up for my community, and I'm going to try to hold space with people. And that's what happened last night, because like I'm saying, I don't live far from where this is going on. This is my backyard, and, somebody has to go, I guess. So.
Well, we appreciate it.
Yeah, we really do appreciate it. And I know that there's a curfew tonight at 7 p.m., but I know that a lot of people are probably still going to be out there. Will you be out there?
Yeah, I think I've been looking at Standing Rock. Like, doing journalism during Standing Rock was extremely difficult. I was arrested for filming people during this international historic event as a journalist wearing press credentials, But I think it's important that there is observers there outside of the frameworks of the state to observe what happens. There has to be some eyes that aren't attached to these things that tell us what's happening all the time. They always get their press conference. They always get the giant mics. And so, yeah, I think I intend to go out there tonight and do journalism and just sort of collect information and share it as quickly as I can. And as far as I know, I was thinking earlier, are we just doing journalism now in war zones? Is that what this is? So that's how they're treating it. There's National Guard in the street. There's Humvees all over my neighborhood. They're posting up at all the moneyed places to protect them. And people are going to do what they're going to do. They're going to share their themselves in the way they feel that's right. And I think as a journalist, we have to go out there and look at it. And observe it and share it with people. And so, yeah, I intend to go out there and just do what I think is, what I should be doing. So.
Well, I want to say, Peeny Gigi, thank you so much for stopping in. And we really appreciate this update and appreciate your work so much. We were with Lorenzo, Serna, and of Indian Collective. And we are really blessed to have you on today and doing all the work for us in our community. Peeny Gigi. We'll be right back after this short break.
Stay with us.
From the team behind Nightingale comes Lake City Sandwiches, a new delivery and pickup sandwich service in Minneapolis. It's a great option when you need a quick meal. Everything is made fresh daily, and they believe in equal rights. That's why Lake City Sandwiches gives 50 cents of every sandwich sold to a different socially concerned charity. They have vegan and vegetarian options along with soup and sides. Delivery and pickup available daily from 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. Place your order now at lakecitysandwiches.com.
In the Army National Guard, family means everything.
They really appreciate what she's done as a sister as well as a soldier and, supporting their country.
Our parents, they were really supportive that all 5 of us would join.
Family members that are soldiers in the Army National Guard inspire and influence, setting a path for others.
It's validating knowing that, I kind of did my part to make sure this is what they actually wanted and that they feel the same way I do. I'm really proud that we get to help shape the future, and I know that my sisters are going to be amazing soldiers.
Serving part-time in the Army National Guard instills pride that you and your family will share in.
A lot of pride, and they're just out there doing something every day and then serving their country as well.
I got my education because of the Guard. I got to travel a little bit and experience a whole different culture.
Visit nationalguard.com to learn more about part-time service. Sponsored by the Minnesota Army National Guard. Aired by the Minnesota Broadcasters Association and this station.
We have vital information we would like to share with you. The Department of Indian Works St. Paul partnered with the Minnesota Department of Health to open the Twin Cities American Indian COVID-19 hotline. They provide information on testing sites, isolation space, vaccines, housing assistance, and food resources. If you or someone you know has questions about COVID-19 or has questions to determine if you should get tested, please call them at 651-304-9986. Again, the number is 651-304-9986. The Twin Cities American Indian COVID-19 hotline is open Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. and Saturday and Sunday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m.
Call the Twin Cities American Indian COVID-19 hotline at 651-304-9986. That's 651-304-9986.
Hi, this is Desi Doyen of the Green News Report and the Bradcast. You're listening to AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota.
Join AM 950 for a virtual brunch with Tom Hartman the morning after the Blue State Ball on Sunday, April 18th at 11 a.m. Tom will discuss his new book, The Hidden History of American Oligarchy, Reclaiming Our Democracy from the Ruling Class. Plus, Tom will take audience questions and you'll get a free copy of his new book as part of your admission. Again, that's AM 950's virtual brunch on Zoom with Tom Hartman, Sunday, April 18th at 11 a.m. Tickets are $75 and are very limited due to the small group setting. Order your tickets now at am950radio.com.
Hey, Ogama, I've been hearing a lot about this term, climate justice. What is that?
Climate justice is recognizing that the negative impacts of climate change don't affect all people equally. It also means transitioning from a fossil fuel-based economy to a more sustainable future. MN350 is one of the groups that's pushing for this transition to protect our futures. You can even get involved too.
That's great, especially since I'm concerned about pipeline projects like Line 3. How can I help MN350?
Just find them on Facebook or visit mn350.org.
With your AM 950 weather, I'm Brett Johnson. Look for a chance of rain overnight with a low around 32. Tuesday cloudy with a high near 41. Wednesday cloudy with a high near 48. And Thursday partly sunny with a high around 53. And the virtual Blue State Ball is less than 1 week away as that comes your way this Saturday night. We have a full lineup of great guests like Santita Jackson, Tom Hartman, Stephanie Miller, John Fugelsang, and more. That's the Blue State Ball this Saturday night. Virtual waiting room opens at 6 with the event at 7. Tickets at am950radio.com.
This is Winona Duke of Honor the Earth, and you're listening to Native Roots Radio. I'm awake.
We are the Lucid Nation.
Hey, welcome back to Native Roots Radio Presents I'm Awake, and I'm your host, Wakanja Hade.
This portion of the show is brought to you by MN350, a grassroots organization fighting for climate justice, and the Minnesota Indian Women's Sexual Assault Coalition.
Yes. Hey, we are always excited to have Dr. Stately on, Wendy. Today's kind of a low-key bummer day because of what's happening in our great cities again. But we need updates.
Absolutely.
And things that are happening at his clinic and via COVID and what other health issues that our community's going through. And it's always a pleasure to have Dr. Stately on. Welcome, Dr. Stately.
Hey, good morning. Good afternoon, everyone. Good evening.
Good afternoon. How are you?
It's been one of those kind of days.
I know, it has been one of those days.
I tried to take a little afternoon nap this afternoon, but it didn't work out all that well. So,
you know, Robert here is an avid napper, and he's a very good one. Like, he lays down within, I would say, 2 minutes. He's snoring out like a light. He sets his alarm for 15 minutes, sometimes 20 minutes, depending. Sets his alarm, gets up, and is refreshed and is awesome.
Yeah.
And if I don't, what happens, Wendy?
Grouchy bear.
Grouchy bear by 8.
Yeah.
By 8
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a little bit of a grouchy bear too. If I had like a day today, I didn't eat very well and I stayed up late watching all that activity around the rioting, and I woke up early and I had a full day and I needed a nap too, and I just didn't do it. And that's an important sort of thing to do for self-care. It's like, take a 10 to 15 minute nap and you can really wake up refreshed and, reorient your mind and do a bunch of other things. So I just didn't do a good job of it today.
Yeah. Well, it's our community is shook again, and we don't blame them. It's just insane.
Absolutely. I didn't actually go into the office today, so I was communicating with my staff while they were at the clinic by text and email and stuff. I was taking care of a lot of other things, reading emails, reading grants, doing a few other things. And, anxiety, right? Anxiety in South Minneapolis and anxiety among my staff in the clinic. We were right in the thick of things last year with the George Floyd murder and all of the civil unrest that happened as a result of that. And of course, since the trial started, we've been anxious about, any unrest that might happen as a result of the deliberations during the jury deliberations, and then of course right after. So we've done our best to prepare as a clinic because we're right a mile from downtown, from where the courthouse is, or less even. And then we're right in the center of a lot of that activity. And so we're prepared physically to try to do what we can to protect our clinic, but that doesn't take care of all of these sort of emotional unrest and all the other stuff that goes along with that. I watched a couple of the things today and I got really tearful at one point because I saw the scene from the mother talking, about, and I was like, there was a moment where I thought, my children are going to be driving in a couple of years, and my children are brown, and my children, and oh my God, I'm just the emotional overwhelm of it today has been exhausting.
It really, really has. And me, he was 20 years old and being a high school teacher and just coming back to high school today, and just it's really hard. It's really hard.
I mean, Dr. Stately, I mean, are you going to have to sit down with your boys and have a conversation with them about what do you do when you get pulled over? Like,
of course, again, I have to have the conversations with them about what they see on TV, right? One of my sons came out of his room earlier while we were watching the press conference with the governor and the two mayors from City of Minneapolis, Mayor and Mayor Carter from St. Paul. And we're watching that, and, he has lots of questions, and, and then we start having a conversation about, like, he's 13 and about to be 14 in a couple of weeks, and, 3 weeks or so. And he's struggling with trying to understand, like, how could this happen? How could that cop accidentally shoot somebody? Like, aren't they trained? Like, so he's struggling with this, just like a lot of other adults and a lot of people in the world are struggling with it. And, and then I have to say to them things like, okay, let's talk a little bit about all of the ways in which everybody involved in that situation could have made a little bit different choices, and we have to, certainly we have to, as collectively as a society, and also as, which includes the police and includes leadership, we have to collectively think of a way that we can, think of force and think of those things as the absolute last resort, right? Let's prioritize human life, right? And so I'm trying to tell my son these things, and like, what could you, if you were in that situation, what might you have done differently? I've been having these conversations with them since they were 8 years old, right? So there's a moment when I'm having those conversations where I get really tearful. And I have these boys, but I have nephews who are half Black and half Native, who are, and I have lots of relatives who are Black and brown and BIPOC. And I'm just like, oh my God, I'm getting so exhausted from having these conversations, right?
Right.
And I think that I should have the answer. I should have the thing to say. I'm a child psychologist. I understand trauma. I understand all of these things, and I'm at a loss for words sometimes. And it's like, and it's a little bit much within the context of a global pandemic and all the other things we've been struggling with. It can be a little
trial. I mean, all I can think of, Dr. Stately, is before cameras, before cell phone cameras. I mean, we had Rodney King in the 80s with a video camera. How often was this happening before? That's all I can think.
Yeah, I was talking to my sons about this because I forget how it came up. I think it came up in the discussion over Easter. I had some family members here. Remember at my super spreader event? I was just teasing you. I had some family members here, and we were talking, and somebody brought up my mom, their grandmother, who they never met because they were born after she passed. And her role as a co-founder of AIM, in her early days. My memories of what that was like growing up in the late 60s and seeing, my uncles, Dennis Banks, and, all the other sort of like AIM folks kind of coming before it was AIM, coming to our home and spending time doing all those things. And so having a conversation with them about like, how did AIM start? Why did AIM start? And then connecting that, and then seeing them connect this. God, this is how long we've been dealing with this type of stuff. Is
Exactly.
So
we talked about early on in the show too, and also talked about it as I mean, I'm 60 or almost 60, and in 1993 we're still throwing drunken Indians in the trunk in the police cars.
Yeah.
I mean, that doesn't seem that long ago for me.
No, it doesn't at all. And so, as a dad of Dakota boys and Indian boys, and an uncle and a grandpa, I'm kind of old enough to be a grandpa to some of these boys, and talking to them about, how to keep safe and what to do and do those things. And those are conversations that all of us need to be having with our children, right? Like helping them and our young people, helping them to make, of course, racial injustice, social injustice pisses me off, right? But I also have to be thoughtful about the time and the context in which to sort of express my anger and the way in which I do it, right? And those are hard things to teach to young people, because they're, of course, I've been in their plays, I've been in their shoes, right? I protested in the streets and done all those things when I was their age, and angry and threw rocks and doing all this other stuff that they do. And thankfully I was never arrested or hurt or killed. But, the benefit of being in my shoes is to try to tell our young people, like, okay, let's think about what we can do differently here, right? There's other ways to dismantle power besides engaging in violence. Civil disobedience and things like that are great things to do, but it's really exhausting. Actually, it's exhausting to continue to have these conversations with our children.
It really is. I
think one of the people don't have to have conversations with their children about. It's a part of white privilege that you don't ever have to have these conversations if you choose not to. I would hope that white people are talking to their children about it, though, and helping them to understand what's going on in the world around them. Because
the big difference is you're getting pulled over and people are asking me if did you know what you did wrong, to white people, and they're asking people of color, where did you get this car?
Yeah.
That was one of Matt McNeil's callers. He was an African-American man who was coming home from work late and driving a brand new car that he bought, and he was pulled over and asked, whose car is this? So it's
two different worlds.
It really is two different worlds. It really is.
It is. And I think that's also, I know it's exhausting for us in our particular sort of position as people of color and as Indigenous people, particularly, I guess, to have to try to educate white people or try to help them understand. And I can certainly, I have been in that place where I'm tired of trying to explain. I'm tired of trying to help you understand. So I reach my limits at that as well. But there are certain things that I feel really strongly about. And one of the things I feel strongly about is, like, when I have the opportunity to say something to the folks that I know, or that are part of my social sphere or part of my professional sphere, or any of those kinds of things where I can have an opportunity to talk to a white ally or make them get closer to becoming a white ally, that's my responsibility as a father, as a community member and a leader, to be able to do that. And so I try to do that. I try to talk to all the white people I live with out here in Prior Lake and I play hockey with. My kids play hockey with, and I try my best to help them understand my experience as a parent of children of color, how this world is different for them. And I guess I'll do that for the rest of my life, right? Until I don't have breath anymore.
And that's why we have the show, and that's why it's important to have leaders like you on and speaking your truth, because I think people listen to your story and what you go through with your boys and your family. They become true allies. So can you stay with us for another segment, Doctor?
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Hey, you're listening to Native Roots Radio Presents. I'm Awake, and we'll be right back.
Minnesota has the only original wolf population in the continental United States, and 80% of Minnesotans believe the wolf should be protected. Howling for Wolves is asking Minnesotans to respect our true wildlife manager. The wolf. Their survival is critical to our ecosystems, our communities, and even our economy. As highly intelligent animals with strong social bonds, Minnesota wolves deserve to be protected and admired. Learn more at howlingforwolves.org. Let's live and let howl.
Hey, Ogama, I've been hearing a lot about this term, climate justice. What is that?
Climate justice is recognizing that the negative impacts of climate change don't affect all people equally. It also means transitioning from a fossil fuel-based economy to a more sustainable future. MN 350 is one of the groups that's pushing for this transition to protect our futures. You can even get involved too.
That's great, especially since I'm concerned about pipeline projects like Line 3. How can I help MN 350?
Just find them on Facebook or visit mn350.org.
Hey, Cudahy to all my friends and relatives in four directions. This is Robert Pilot of Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake. I'm here to ask you for your support. Finding honest Native-centered news is not easy. But with your support, we're able to provide accurate information about Standing Rock, Line 3, treaty violations, and COVID-19 in our Native communities. Please visit Native Roots Radio Network on Patreon and donate if you can. That's Native Roots Radio Network on Patreon. Pinigigi, and thank you for your support. I heard sex trafficking happens a lot in Indian country. What is that?
Here are some of the real reasons why sex trafficking happens in Indian country. Unequal gender roles that were forced on us by colonization. Communities don't have enough resources. Silence around domestic and sexual violence. Lack of attention and justice for missing and murdered Indigenous people. There's a lot of behavior that keeps our communities out of balance. These are just a few true reasons why Native communities are targeted by traffickers. When these acts of violence happen in our communities, it opens us all up for exploitation.
Sponsored by the Minnesota Indian Women's Sexual Assault Coalition.
Hey, welcome back to Native Roots Radio Presents I'm Awake, and I'm your host, Robert Pilot.
This portion of the show is brought to you by Howling for Wolves, protecting wolves for future generations.
I don't know if I feel like howling. It's one of those.
Okay, if you don't, we don't have to howl. We could howl tomorrow.
Yeah. Oh,
There goes
Ogama did a little howl.
She didn't get the memo.
No, we're just kidding. It's just a kind of a gray day.
It is a gray day.
With things, and I want to talk to her. We're here with Dr. Antony Stately. I forgot to really introduce Dr. Stately.
He is the CEO of Native American Community Clinic.
Yes, and I wanted to talk a little bit, for our audience to listen to Dr. Stately and talk a little bit about trauma and trauma response, especially with what's going on. Welcome back, Dr. Stately.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, I'm happy to answer questions about trauma and trauma response. I'm a trained child psychologist. Worked most of my career before becoming the CEO of NAC in direct care, providing services, psychological services to tribal and urban communities here in Minneapolis, back in Los Angeles, where I lived for 18 years before coming home to Minnesota. It's interesting. I was like having, when I was on your segment earlier, I was listening to the other reporter talking about, his experience and his reporting of what was going on in Brooklyn Center last night. And it was either him or someone else I heard making a reference to Rodney King. I guess you made it earlier when you said like Rodney King was a big, huge flashpoint, 30 years ago, right? Almost. And that got caught and created a huge outroar and some rioting in Los Angeles 30 years ago, because somebody just happened to have a camcorder back then. Like, this is way before there were cell phones and way before we had the ability to do the kinds of things that we do now today, right? And capture everything instantaneously, and gosh forbid, like Facebook Live. And I was living in Los Angeles when Rodney King riot happened. And I remember buildings across the street and down the street from me burning and things like that. And that was a crazy time in my life as a young man. And I remember last year when I was going through some of the stuff with the things that were happening in response to the George Floyd murder. And I had a moment where I was thinking, like, this is so bigger and different than it was when I was 20 something and watching the Rodney King response, right? In lots of different ways qualitatively. It also happened to be different because I was older and I understood some things better, right? I had lived through some things. I also had some psychological training as a psychologist, so I understood some context. And I just talked to my son about this in the car like maybe 2 hours ago when we were driving back from getting some stuff from the store, and he was asking me, like, well, how could an explanation for, like, why are people getting mad and why are they creating burning down buildings and doing, and he sees the footage and so trying to help him to understand, like, the way that trauma works is, if you don't resolve it, if there isn't, some work involved on the individual part, but also on the society's part collectively to address it and resolve it, it kind of lays there in your psychology and your emotions, like kind of like I use the term a little bit like groundwater, right? Like we can look out there and we don't see the groundwater, but we know it's just underneath the surface and we can tap it. Trauma is a lot like that as well. So it's like, if we don't do something to sort of address that issue that's kind of covered up and not visible to the naked eye, at moments of crisis like this one, it can burst into flames like a big, huge flashpoint, right? And trying to help them to say, like, some people, this is the way they deal with their hurt. This is the way they deal with their frustration, their frustration with the challenges that seem so unjust. And helping to remember that helps us not to get angry with them and helps us not to demonize them. Because I think we can also, as a society, if we don't understand that too, people in out there sort of kind of in the society can start to demonize the rioters and are the folks who sort of are, frustrated, angry, and demonize their behavior if they don't understand what all the rest of the phenomenon that's going on, right?
Wow. Exactly. I think one of the difference I've seen in this from maybe Rodney King, beat down was that it seems like we have a lot more white people that are protesting with us now. I mean, I went to the first George Floyd protest after his murder, and there was easily 10,000 people there, and from all walks of life. And I think that's one of the things that I could look at as a guiding light or a good thing.
Yeah, that's absolutely my experience too. I remember standing. I went to we went to outside of Migazi right after the weekend, that Saturday after it had burned. And I was there with my sons and some other folks that I knew, my nephew, Ruben, Keto. When we were there for we had a ceremony outside. We sang some songs. We stood there in prayer for Migazi and the loss of their building and those children that rely on those services. And I remember, I was raised in that neighborhood. I was raised a block away from the 3rd Precinct. I know the precinct really, really well. I grew up with it my whole entire life as a child and to a young man. And I stood there and I thought, what was different was to look out into the sea of people and see all of the blonde-headed people and the white people standing in solidarity with us. That's not something I remember seeing. Even when I was a child in the early 60s, I didn't see that many non-people of color standing with us at critical things. And so that felt hopeful to me, right? And I felt hopeful to me. I think there's probably a lot of people that felt that way too. And then when you feel that hopeful and you have this experience like Daunte Wright, so 1 year later practically, right? This experience where it's like, and it can feel like you're driving a car at 90 miles per hour and then all of a sudden you hit the wall, right? So it can be that shocking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I want to really thank you for stopping in. I know we didn't talk too much about COVID, but that's just say wear a mask.
COVID's still here.
COVID's still here. Wear a mask.
Wear a mask.
Get vaccinated.
Yeah, and don't listen to QAnon or any of those sites. Well, I really appreciate you being on, Dr. Stately. I really, really do. And let's talk next week, and hopefully we'll have some better news.
Yes.
But this is real life things, and I really appreciate your insight on what's happening in our neighborhood, and I hope everybody else has enjoyed our conversation as much as I have. Peeny.
Thank you as well.
Hey, I would like to end with these thoughts. If you're listening to the show, you are part of the resistance. We need to resist, divest, join a group, run for office.
Mm-hmm.
You've been listening to Native Roots Radio Presents I'm Awake, and I'm your host, Robert Pilot. The revolution is kicking into high gear, and I want to thank Lorenzo and for that great interview, and Dr. Stately. And we're still here. We are the 7th generation.
Free Leonard Peltier. Stop line 3.
Installing